Hey everyone, welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to follow so you never miss a beat. I have a super special guest, and we just got off probably the world's greatest bloopers that I forgot to record, so you guys won't hear the conversation, but if only you guys heard it. There's so many nuggets just in that little conversation, and now we're going to drop a whole lot more in this episode. So without further ado, Christian, for anyone that may not know you, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Oh, right on. Thank you so much for having me here, my friend, and always a pleasure. Our conversations they just spill out, and it's a lot of fun. So Christian Scott, I'm a realtor, an investor, and a philanthropist. My real estate brokerage services provide the money for my investing, and my investing provides the money for my philanthropy. And that's how we've kind of structured our life by design. I'm blessed to be married to my high school sweetheart and live a whopping one town over from where I grew up. So I'm small town, New Hampshire, but doing big things around the country, which is a lot of fun.
Amazing. And Christian, tell us a little bit about your walk to wealth. Where did the story all start? Where does the story take place? Take us back to when you were growing up. What was money like? What were your, was this something you had in sight when you were a little Christian?
Yeah. So growing up had little to nothing. Literally, a trip to McDonald's, we would bring our own cheese because a hamburger was cheaper than a cheeseburger. I'm like, I look back and like, that's insane. And I grew up in a very legalistic church that, it wasn't the love of money is the root of all evil. It was simply money is the root of all evil. So I thought, okay, well, if money is the root of all evil and we don't have any, then it's probably good that we don't have any. And so I didn't have a healthy relationship with money. Definitely grew up in a scarcity mentality. Fast forward to 6.5 years ago, left my job, spent a year unemployed, that wasn't part of the plan. Yeah. Not at all, but found myself unemployed for about a year. Our finances got to the point that we were borrowing money from my parents to pay our mortgage. Like it was bad. A friend invited me out to breakfast. Within 3 months, I was a licensed realtor. He's like, "You're going to make a great real estate agent." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And that was the path that I needed to be on. Started out and have stayed with Keller Williams, which shifted me into that mindset of abundance. Gary Keller, a brilliant man. I remember hearing him say, anything you can dream, you can achieve in 5 years. And I couldn't laugh it off because I had achieved a lot of my goals in life, but I was coming out of a very dark place. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, in 4.5 years, we went from borrowing money from my parents to a net worth of $1 million in real estate. So small town New Hampshire, and mm-hmm. I can do it. And you're doing it. You're on your wealth building journey as well. And so I love being an encouragement. Now, like I said, we're at a point where the wealth building provides opportunities to give back to the causes that matter to us. Yeah. The people that we support around the world.
Yeah. Amazing. And I kind of wanted to ask you a question just out of curiosity, right? So you mentioned you had, very scarce beginnings. And as you know, a lot of the times when you grow up in like more scarce beginnings, you're taught not to ask for anything from others, right? You're taught not to, it's like I know whether it's ego or whatever it is, but you're taught not to ask for help, right? So what was that kind of like, emotionally, mentally, being an adult now with your wife and having to, reach back out to your parents to help for the mortgage? What was that like?
So thankfully I was mature enough to recognize that my parents viewed it as a blessing that they were in a better place in life. Whereas, if it had been, during my childhood, they had nothing to offer people. They didn't have the extra resources. So for them now to have the opportunity to pay it forward through my family was a blessing. And that helps start the vision for wealth building on its own of, okay, I don't ever want to be in this position where I have to borrow money. And I want to be in a position where if someone else needs it, I have it. Yeah. Right? If having two children, our kids are 11 and 17. And so looking at them and saying, instead of having the scarcity mentality of, oh my gosh, we need to have money in reserves in case anything bad happens, it's the alternate mindset of, hey, we better have money in reserves in case they ever have a really cool opportunity. So, for our son Enzo, who's in high school, has the opportunity to go to Costa Rica with his Spanish class over February vacation. I'm like, go. Like, I never could have done that. I want you to do that. Yet to balance that with, the character building stuff that we go through in life, he and I are spending April vacation on a missions trip with our missionaries that we support in Nicaragua. So he's going to see Central America from the tourist side and then from the local side. And I think that's going to be really important for him to gain that understanding of this is why we give back.
Yeah, amazing. And I want to ask you another question before we get really into today's conversation. What was it like in your 20s? Because I feel like that's an age where most of the time it's like we're still kind of figuring out what we wanted to do. You kind of got
Yeah.
into a job and worked it for a while before finally getting into real estate. What was that like navigating the world at that age?
So the twenties were really interesting because I had a couple of pretty monumental years, like back to back. So at 24, had an opportunity, thanks to financing through my parents, to fulfill a lifelong dream of Ferrari ownership. So at 24 years old, I bought an 18-year-old Ferrari, and my wife and I had an amazing time with that. A year later, bought her engagement ring. A year later, we bought a house together. We've never paid rent. We've always owned. But that put me in a weird spot in life where I said, that was everything I had hoped for. I had a
Yeah.
house, a Ferrari, a wife who was my high school sweetheart, and like I I had run out of dreams because I never dreamed big enough. So there was
Mm.
kind of a lull of progress up the corporate ladder was pretty haphazard. If an opportunity presented itself, I'm one that will always go through that open door, but it didn't have direction to it. It was, hey, this is close, let's do this. Someone offers you something like, okay, I'll try that. I can do that. And you get into the mindset of, well, I can do anything. What do I want to do? I don't know. I have everything I want. I have everything I need. Then having children gives you another perspective of how do I provide in the immediate and then in the long term for their futures. We're blessed that my parents are 10 minutes away one direction, my in-laws are 10 minutes away the other direction. So we never pay daycare bills. So as our kids have gotten older, the perspective that my wife and I have taken on is that of we want to be those grandparents that take care of the grandkids. So
Yeah.
so that was a big impetus, big motivator for our investing to say, okay, what do we need for passive income so that we work because we feel like it? And what do we have to do to get there?
Yeah.
And it was a lot closer than I had imagined.
Yeah. Amazing. And so you bring up a super interesting point, right? You said that you were in your 20s, you had the wife, the car, the house, and you ran out of dreams because you never dreamed big enough. That's extremely powerful. And we're blessed to be in a company where creating a life by design is almost like a catchphrase, it's a slogan. It's like, if you're a part of Keller Williams and you haven't heard this, it's like, where have you been? Like, are you
You've been
hiding
under
under
a
a rock?
rock.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but most people never think of that, living a
Right.
life by design. And
Yeah.
it took, getting everything you wanted for you to finally realize, like, yeah, what now, right? So where do we begin designing a life by design? Whether you're 20 years old, whether you're 60 years old, and you want to get started, how do we start creating
Yeah.
that
Well,
life?
it's funny because you have to recognize that life that by design is going to change. It's gonna evolve as you learn more, as you experience more, you understand what's important. So
Hmm.
my wife and I just celebrated 22 years of marriage, and we look back at when we bought that house and we were first married, the dream at that point was, can you imagine what life would look like when our combined salaries hit six figures? Like, we'll feel like we've arrived at that point. But that was before I realized that every 20 years, the cost of living doubles. So yeah, that 100,000 was like, okay, well now we both need to be making 100. And like, that's a goal that just keeps going out there, but it's never been something that really motivated me.
Yeah.
And then, so on our anniversary, we were talking and reflecting on that. And because philanthropy is such a big piece of who we are, I said, what do we have to do with the real estate and with the investing so that our giving in 2023 hit six figures? What kind of an impact would we have on the world when we can do that?
Yeah.
And that's again, you go back to Gary Keller. When you look at millionaire real estate and agent, it's
Hmm.
gross $1 million, net $1 million, give $1 million. And
Yeah.
I'm working with fewer zeros than the book does. Yet that's the stage of life that we're at. 5 years from now, we may be adding a net, but for now, that's the vision that God's put on our hearts and and the goal that we're shooting after. Because the passive income is there. Like we surpassed
Yeah.
what we needed, and now it's growth for the sake of giving.
Yeah, definitely. And it's such a coincidence that we're kind of stumbled into this point because, like, literally last night I went to go play basketball and I caught up with an old counselor, and I haven't seen her since I was in high school. So almost
Oh my
4
gosh.
years now. And so instead of playing basketball, I talked for 3 hours. And one of the things that we're talking about is that so many people nowadays are selfish without realizing. And the reason that they're selfish is because they say, I only need to make, let's say, for example, for easy number, 100,000 a year to live the life I want to live.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the world's not all about you, right? What if you can make more? What if you should make more, right?
Right.
Because if you had more, and her goal was kind of to like giving back to the youth. And I was asking her like, what if you wanted to build your own facility for kids? Could you do that on a $100,000 salary? The answer is no, you can't build that from the ground up. You would have to get investors, sponsors, lenders, right? But
Exactly.
like, how much money would it take for you to make for you could say, screw it. I want to make a building here for kids. I
Here we
have
go.
the money here. I got the cash. Boom. Let's put it down. Like people
Yeah.
don't ever think about that, about, how much they could do, how much they could give back, how much they could help if their income goal wasn't so tied around the fact of what do they need. And the income goal was
Yes.
like, what do I need to fulfill this mission, this purpose, this calling that I'm being, compelled or pulled to act on.
Yeah. I came out of a training last week. James Shaw was up in Woburn, Massachusetts, teaching an ALC clinic. And one of my big takeaways that, and I don't know that he said anything or if it just, I found clarity in that environment that we've been blessed with incredible life that we lead right now. And the bigger I can make my world, the more people I can invite to come play in my world and grow their worlds to then have that snowball effect of, well, I know the impact that I can have, and the more people that I can bring in, they're going to go out and have an impact. And by leading by example, when we teach others to do what we're doing, then they go out and teach others. And I really feel like we have an obligation that particularly once, yes, while you're on your wealth building journey, it's important to share what you're doing and bring others along for the ride. And when you reach whatever your definition of wealth is, you have an even bigger obligation. It's almost an obligation. It's a moral imperative, of course, to what good can I create with this, and how do I make the opportunity for more people? Whether it's for us, it's that philanthropic piece and creating generational wealth for our children. That I don't want to be forgotten 2 generations from now.
Yeah,
I want 5 generations from now to say, okay, we had this relative named Christian, and here's the journey that he started our family on. And how much bigger can we make it now?
Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up. So it reminds me of a quote that I use to make my mission statement, and it's by Plato, and it's the duty of the enlightened is to enlighten the unenlightened. And
Perfect.
that pretty much described exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I kind of heard this statistic. So I didn't know this until recently, but the average like family wealth or inheritance lasts only 3 generations. Right. And
that's why I went with 5 generations.
Yeah. So
because I heard that same statistic that after 3 generations, it's gone. Well, then what do you do? And so I look back, and my grandfather passed away several years ago, and he was a union truck driver, lived as though he was in poverty. And when it came time to really go through his estate and put it all together, he was worth about 1.3 in land holdings. Like, but he chose to live in poverty. And that was sad to me. And then I realized that through some investing decisions that my parents had made, and through some of the estate from my grandfather that got distributed amongst the 4 children, because my dad's the first one in his generation to reach that $1 million net worth. And that pushed me into okay, I want to be the first one in my generation to hit net worth. And, okay, well, what is that going to look like for my children? What do we need to teach them? What opportunities do we need to get them to start them on their journey? And I think, there's the book that started so many of us, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Enzo read it when he was like 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
So, children can absorb it. And so if you're saying, oh, that's an investing book, that's lofty ideals, it's a mindset book. And wherever you're at in your journey, if you are looking to get into abundance and to understand how the top of the world plays, well, here's how we do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it raises another interesting point too, right? It's hard times breed strong men, right? Strong men breed easy times breed weak men breed hard times, and the cycle continues.
Right.
So it's like, how do we break out of this infinite loop? And that's why, it only lasts 3 generations, right? Because it's always an infinite loop. And I kind of came to this idea. I don't know where I came from, but it's like, instead of generational wealth, we should strive for generational wisdom. That way, if we were to get sued, right? If we were to get sued, if we get a lawsuit, if we were to lose everything, right? Our kids will have those, those wisdom, those anecdotes that stand the test of time, and we'll always be able to kind of like just pick back up where we left off and kind of have like this manual, like how to build a wealthy life.
They'll know how to rebuild.
Exactly.
And that's the big thing. And that, so many investors who the conversation is, well, if you lost everything, what would you do differently, or what would you do the same?
Yeah.
And those are the skills that we need to be teaching our children and our siblings and the people in our circles.
Yeah.
There was a book. I'm trying to think of the name of the book. Oh, Entrusted. Jessica Starr had recommended it, and it talks about not just creating trusts to then pass the wealth on that is then gonna, but creating opportunities to convey morality and integrity and family values and family history.
Yeah.
The pieces that get lost. So where does our identity come from? I can trace one part of my family literally back to Plymouth Rock. Whereas my wife moved here from Poland when she was 10. So like her family tree here in the States starts very different. And it's important for our children to understand what her side of the family was going through, because how generations dealt with war, living in the midst of it versus being remote to it, breeds different character traits in people. Right?
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're going through it. That's definitely it's something I couldn't imagine. And there's this one guy, he said something along the lines is like, for you not to strive to be everything that you could potentially be is almost a disgrace to everyone who's came before you. All the people like that were fighting saber-toothed tigers and, and throwing rocks and started fires. It's like a disgrace to your whole bloodline, essentially, which is a kind of an extreme way of viewing the world. But like I tie that kind of to another thought that I kind of like cultivated, it came about, and it's like, if you're not striving to be everything that you could be, you're letting the world down. And it sounds like a grand, like one of those lofty ideas, like woo-woo ideas. But it's like, if you know 100 people and they know 100 people and they know 100 people and they so, it doesn't take too many circles of before you reach 1 billion people. I think it's like 5 circles a night. So you're only 5 levels away from 1 billion people. And it's like, if you're not doing everything that you can, it's like, I think Tupac said a line, like, I might not change the world, but I'll definitely be, inspire the person that does, or something along those lines. Like, you never know if you could be the person that does inspire that other person, because you never know how many people could help. Because you could inspire me and I go on and do, massive things. And next thing you know, the people I inspire someone that does even bigger things than I ever had planned.
Right.
And next thing you know, that's like, it just keeps on going.
I mean, let's go back to last week when you ran into your counselor.
Yeah.
And one conversation that she has can totally change the trajectory of someone's life. And that's her profession. It's no different for you and I, regardless of what your title is. You have an opportunity to leave everyone you meet better off than when you found them, whether it's giving them hope or sharing love with them or inspiring them or imparting wisdom on them. Every opportunity. And you know what? It might just be that smile to the person behind the counter serving your coffee.
Yeah.
It might be seeing someone at a bar with a veteran cap on and just going over and paying his tab because you respect him or her for what they've sacrificed.
Yeah, right? Definitely. And another thing too, it's like, there's this other quote that I heard on a similar topic. Yeah. And it goes something along the lines of, usually the only people that change the world are people crazy enough to think that they can, or something like that. and like, it's about that unwavering belief, right? That we could actually make a difference. And a lot of people I don't really, have that belief. And I kind of want to ask you too, like, how, because you came from pretty humble beginnings.
Yeah.
When did that belief came about that you can actually make an impact or a dent, not only just in your job and in the corporate ladder, but like in your community and the people around you, and on a national level, what you're doing now?
Yeah, that was within the past few years. That was when abundance really hit home. When I embraced it and realized, whatever I can offer to others, I'm going to do that. And it's not even I have to. And this is another mindset shift. Instead of always saying, okay, I have to go to work, I have to do this, we get to. We have chosen our path, and we can change that path. Don't get me wrong with that. However, you've accepted a job. You get to go to that job every day. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You can change it.
Yeah.
Yet being thankful for where we are And being thankful for where you are doesn't mean that you're not hopeful for an even brighter future.
Yeah, definitely. It's like there's one guy that said in a past episode that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And it's
Yep.
hard to think about that at face value, especially when you're in the trenches, right? You're in that job that you hate, you're going clocking in,
Right.
day out, right? Or you started in real estate and you're not making any deals and you're trying to figure out, what on earth you want to do in life. Or like when my situation, it's like it gets a little difficult, but it's when you figure out that no matter what the situation, no matter how traumatic, no matter what it is, it's not about you. It's about the people that you could help. Regardless of how traumatic that situation may be, there's probably other people out there that if you just shared your story and, got to the other side, that you could help all the other people that are currently going through it right now.
And that requires us to share our story. And so to be humble and vulnerable, to say, yeah, I spent a year unemployed, battling depression and borrowing money.
Yeah.
Would I wish that on anyone? No. Am I ridiculously grateful that I was able to go through it and what it has brought me to? Oh my gosh, yet a hundredfold.
Yeah.
A hundredfold. So yeah, when you're working with other people that are struggling, to be able to give them hope by saying, I know you might not see it now, and I pray that you will see it in the future. And here's my story and why I can tell you that it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And you mentioned on the topic of hope that one of your friends invited you out and he told you you're going to be a great real estate agent.
Yeah.
Did you know at that time that he was the light that you needed to make this entire shift?
No. So I had known him. He was a member at a health club that I was operations director for back in 1996.
Okay.
When I left the health club, we lost touch, reconnected at church, ended up doing some leadership training together, ended up doing a men's Bible study together for several years. And I just had this intuition that like I'd talked to Fred for a while. I owe him a phone call and I called him and he's telling me how wonderful his business is and how he had been in real estate the whole time. And so he was raving about it and he's like, what's going on with you? And I'm like, some great interviews, but nothing's coming together. Really not sure what to do. And he goes, we're going to have breakfast together tomorrow morning. Fantastic. I really thought he was going to say, I'm looking for an assistant. Can you run my office? Can you run my business?
Yeah.
But it was the third sentence out of his mouth. And he said, Mona says you're going to be a great realtor. Mona was his wife. I'm like, what? He goes, as soon as I told her we were having breakfast, she said you're going to be a great realtor. Like, oh, okay. I don't know what that looks like. And that was just before the holiday season in 16. And so went back, talked to my wife. She's like, I could see that. Talked to my parents. They're like, oh, we can totally see how that would work. Keep in mind, I had avoided sales most of my life. Like that was not something I was looking forward to, but somehow I came to that realization that sales is just another way to serve people. And once it tapped into my servant's heart, I was totally on board. And like I said, in under 3 months, I was licensed and jumped in, not knowing what I was doing. The first house we bought from a family friend. The second house was new construction. I never even worked with a realtor to know what the process was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And God blessed that leap of faith. And first year was great. Then I had a staff position I was doing the right thing, but making no money. And then when COVID hit, my line item was eliminated from the budget. I rolled back into sales and switched to a market center that is full of abundance thinking and people who dream far larger than I do.
Yeah.
I think that's important. We want to bring people along on the journey. And so there's this fine balance of bringing people along who are not where you are, surrounding yourself with some like-minded people to encourage one another because you're going through the same challenges, and then making sure that you have a group of people that are beyond where you are that are going to challenge you and fill in some of those things, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up a good point too, because I remember back when I took BOLD, which is like a KW training for anyone that may not know. And I took BOLD, and one of the weeks, the topics was talking about net worth and how much you need to make a year passively. And the instructor, Kimberly Horn, she was saying that her goal is to make $2 million a year passive. And at that point in time, I was like, what did that even look like? Like, well, how do you even get the, I don't even know, like around that idea that people can make that much money. And then fast forward a little bit, my OP was talking about that there's a Keller Williams Wealth Group, and they came back from when they did the original launch of it, the KW Wealth. And in order to go, you needed to have a $50 million net worth plan. And I was like,
right?
People think about getting to 50 million. Like, what on earth is going on? Like, how?
It blew my mind when I saw that $50 million thing. So I had a meeting with my OP and he's wonderful human being, great investor. And I remember talking with him, and at that point in my mind, I thought, I can get to the point where I grow my real estate business so that I can buy 1 or 2 investment properties a year. I'd feel like I'm pretty successful. And so then when I started talking with Mead, and he said, yeah, his goal is to have enough passive income to that the passive income allows him to buy 1 property a month, and then get to the point where he buys 1 property a week. I'm like, 1 property a week? I hadn't even thought about that. I thought 1 or 2 a year was good, but
Yeah.
so that's why having those people that are further along, that are even loftier dreamers, and they've already achieved beyond where we are. And that's what keeps motivating us and pushing us forward. And it's not, again, it's not about who has the most when they die. It's about what's the greatest good that I can do. And I need more to be able to do more. One of the things that really caught me, my friend Bill had come back from a John Maxwell seminar, and there's a pretty expensive conference to go to. So pretty successful people in the room. And he said that John Maxwell came out and on stage, and he said, how many of you want to make more money next year? And it's a motivated group. So a lot of the hands went up. And then he said, how many of you have nonprofits that you support? And virtually every hand went up. And his third question was, how many of the nonprofits that you support could use more of your money next year? And that's when the idea of money is good for the good that money can do. That's when it really hit home. Like, and it was cliche up until that point. And then I said, okay, what are the causes? And so that's led me to now I serve on 4 different boards. We have 5 children in Colombia that we sponsor. We have 2 children in the Dominican Republic that we sponsor. Missionaries in Nicaragua, veterans in New Hampshire. Like, it's so much fun because it's that greater impact. We all want to be something. We all want to be part of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? And that it's not that living large gets you a seat at a different table. It's no, we get more tables to go pour into.
Yeah. More tables to feed. Right.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a Drake quote that he said in one of the songs. It's like, he said, this year my table got so many plates on it, or something like that. And it's like, how can we make, our table, like, how could we like fill that up with a bunch of people, right? And how can we, just be able to serve all these, have a giant, like, buffet, not style, like banquet, right? How can we keep on filling up so many more plates, right? How can we do that? And it's hard to think about at first, 'cause it's like, especially when you're starting off and you barely have enough for yourself. And I kind of want to ask you too, because a lot of the times when it comes to that stuff, it's a shift, right? You have to make. And to kind of circle back a little bit, back to when your friend told you that you're going to be a great agent.
Yeah.
I know you asked your parents, you asked your wife, you asked, for everyone else, but what internal shift did you have to make within yourself to take that leap of faith, regardless of whether it was real estate or whatever it could have been? But like, just when it comes to opportunities and you're unsure and you're in a dark place, what kind of internal shifts do you have to make to get to that?
Yeah. So it was interesting because I was out of options. I hadn't thought about real estate in 20 years. 20 years ago, I had thought about it, but that never materialized.
Yeah.
But I was out of options. And my experience in talking with other successful people, when what they do is plan A and there is no plan B, you make it work. And so I knew that I had been turned down for jobs that I was more than qualified for. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership. Like that should have opened a lot of doors.
Yeah.
They just weren't opening because there was something better for me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was pressing that, okay, if this isn't right, it's because there's something better. And I'm going to credit my wife that was a big piece of the mindset when I got into real estate. Because as you know, when you're fresh in real estate, when you find out that a friend or a family member has bought and or sold with someone other than you, like, that hurts. And my gut reaction was, don't they know that this is how I'm trying to put food on the table? Like, what are they doing? Again, that was scarcity. My wife's abundance mentality was, you know what, instead of viewing it as a punishment, what if you viewed it as God's hand of protection, taking you out of a situation that wasn't going to end well for you? And if he's taking you out of a situation like that, don't you think he has something better for you? And that's when I was able to come to peace with the idea that, hey, if people buy and sell and invest with someone else, as long as they're with a good agent that's taking care of them, that's okay. It might mean that agent did a better job than I did at building the relationship. And as long as they are competent, and skilled, and I know that they're going to be okay on the other side, I can rest with that. I don't lose sleep over that. I encourage that.
Yeah, definitely. I was told too, like, to be careful when it comes to interviewing local agents on the podcast because, like, you know, they're also agents here in the area, and I didn't say anything, but when I heard that, the only thing I could think of in my mind is that's such a scarce way of viewing the
Right.
world, right? And like for me, it's like this whole idea of starting this was like abundance, right? Wealth, abundance. Like
Yep.
that's part of my mission statement is creating that a wealthy, abundant life, right? And that's when you know you're operating in abundance, as you said, it's either God protecting you or God
Yes.
serving them to the best that they can be served. And right, everyone, and it's like certain things it's hard to really wrap your head around a lot of these topics because it's like some of these things don't really make sense. And I'm starting to realize
For
like,
sure.
and it kind of goes back to like when I was in math back in high school. And I genuinely feel like, and I'll tie it together. I feel like
Okay.
I was great at math in high school because I never questioned like why this made any sense. I didn't understand nothing what I was doing, but I was always a
Yep.
grade or two above in math. Like I was in like, well, people were taking like algebra 3 or something. I was already in like freaking like pre-calc or like and taking calc. So
Oh,
like,
you
I
were
was
better
always
than I was.
math came easy to me, but I never really understood what I was doing. I just kind of knew like certain things. It's just kind of like how
Wow.
it is, right? And I didn't try to because it's like when it comes to a lot of these things in life, it's like there's like, well, why there's some people that have a lot and some people that don't have much. Well, I don't know. We had billions of people, and I was talking about this the other day. Like Elon Musk is trying to go to Mars. We have people that created light from nothing. We have people that created all these amazing inventions. And
Yes.
despite all these brilliant minds, no one can figure out why some people have a lot and some. It's like these problems. Like who knows? It's like you're asking the wrong question, right? It's like, oh, why is it like that? It's like I don't know. He doesn't know. Nobody knows. Nobody that ever lived will probably ever know. But it's like that we can only just strive to make do the best and make the most out of what we do know and what we do understand,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And make the most of the relationships that we're blessed to be able to form and grow and nurture. And you never know who you're going to come into contact with. So several years ago at Keller Williams Family Reunion in New Orleans, somehow I ended up meeting Mike McCarthy, who's a regional director, and his region was having a cocktail party. He's like, oh, why don't you come to the cocktail party with us? I'm like, okay. Well, as I spend more time talking with him, so he's one of the early members of the group Go Abundance. I'm like,
really?
What is that? And so he was telling me about it, and at that point in my life, I'm like, that is such a lofty ideal. Like I'm never going to be deserving of like joining a group like that. And I can look at my life now and say, if that's something I want to pursue, then let's get after it.
Yeah.
Talk about big thinking individuals, right?
Yeah.
Who are, when you put a bunch of successful people in a room to just help each other build greater success. We put, that's why it's so important to be masterminding around anything you're doing, whether you're investing or you're a realtor or you're a car salesman. Like, just go share ideas because the world is big enough that if there's something that works well in my business, I want to go teach other people how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not scared that you're going to take my clients away. If you take them away, then they weren't mine to begin with.
Yeah.
We keep going. So sharing what you have is huge.
And on that same topic and on the same note, right? It's like when you share, not only are you, helping them out, but you're raising the level of standard in your industry, right? You're raising it as a whole. Now, for example, you mentioned used car salesmen. They have a lot of raising they need to do because they have a pretty bad rap.
There's an opportunity for sure.
Right. And then you mentioned too, like if they take your clients and they weren't really yours, but like when you're operating out of abundance, you're creating, right? So it's never take his or take hers. It's you're creating, right? And if you're creating and they're creating, there's never any overlap, right? When you're taking, that's when you're operating out of scarcity, right? If you take his or her, that's scarce. When you're in creating, when you're operating out of creation, right? You're never ever taking from anybody because you're all just, have your own sources that you are growing.
Yep. And that idea of creating it, we have to get past the notion that life is a zero-sum game. In order for me to increase, you need to decrease. No, we create.
Yeah.
There's more that is simply that we get to go after. And that's a huge shift in thinking because you look at at childhood sports. I mean, from the earliest T-ball game, and you're keeping score.
Yeah.
It's not about me versus you. It's me being the best person that I can possibly be with the resources and knowledge and time and opportunity that I've been blessed with.
Yeah.
Go get after it.
Exactly. And then you brought up another interesting point too, that it literally just slipped my mind. But I was going to say something about being in creator, but I completely forgot what I was going to get at.
All
So
good, my friend.
I'll circle back to where we were at Family Reunion, and we are talking about opportunities, right? That can happen.
Yeah.
And so this year at Family Reunion, or 2022 in Family Reunion, I was able to meet Julie Lachey. And how I met her was, I still remember it to this day. So we're part of this group called Early Birds, if for anyone that's listening that doesn't know. And they were having a little, I think it was a lunch or dinner event. I think it was a dinner event one of those days. And so I was on my way to the dinner, and I was standing in like the middle of this like section, like this little walkway in Orlando where like all the restaurants and stuff were at, close to the conference room in the conference event. And she was sitting down with a couple other people, and she had called me over. Don't know how or why, but like all I knew, and at that time I didn't really know who she was because I still relatively knew her agent. So at that time, all I knew is that she was the lady that was speaking on stage, on the main stage, on the big stage in front of everybody. She had called me over, and I went to go talk to her for a little while, and we connected. And I kind of forgot the conversation, but then I had the opportunity to see her again in August at Mega Camp, and which is another Keller Williams event. And we kind of picked up the conversation. She was like, "Yeah, you're supposed to reach out to me." I was like, I didn't remember, but we got into the conversation, and I ended up having her on the podcast, and her episode dropped into September. And it's like crazy the opportunity that you'll be able to meet when you're kind of, in the operating at a vibration, at a level where you're just attracting all these, opportunities and these people.
People that we come into, the people that we meet, the people that we contact with, the people that we admire, they are far more approachable than we realize.
Yeah.
Well, and another podcast I listen to at the end of every episode, it's, hey, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? And I'm that guy that if I hear you say something that impresses me, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to set up a virtual copy, and we're going to get to know each other and see if there's an alignment that we can be pursuing together.
Yeah.
And that's what has opened up investing opportunities for it. That's how I got involved in syndications.
Yeah.
I looked at it, I'm like, I can either go spend 3 or 4 years learning how to put one together, or I can go build relationships with people that are really good at it. And so I leveraged other people's opportunities and their experience with my capital. And it was great. I mean, there's one group that we're involved in 3 deals with them in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't meet them in person until last month.
Really?
But it started with a virtual copy on Zoom, and grew the friendship and grew the relationship to know that we were in alignment from a risk perspective, from a goals perspective, from a morality and spiritual perspective.
Yeah.
And that's so key with your business partners.
Yeah.
And when you're, regardless of your business, you have business partners. It might be someone in another department that depends on you, or you depend on them. It could be a sales organization that you run, whatever it is, for you to be able to, for me to be able to sleep well at night. I need to know that I'm in alignment with the people around me.
Yeah. Especially when money is involved. And a lot of the time, like people, they get into partnership, and because I feel like as people that are beginners in my stage of life, where it's like we're young, hungry, and want to get after, but don't know really where to start, we're just told, just JV on a deal. And we're not even taught what JV means. For anyone that listening, it stands for joint venture. But like,
but if you're just out of high school or college, it's junior varsity.
Oh yeah, exactly, right. And so we're kind of taught to joint venture, and it's like, well, how? We just go to someone with money? It's like, no, there's so much more that goes into it. And a lot of people, they throw the solution and don't give any context around it at all. Right. And it's like finding, someone that you're aligned with. It's like, it's all about, can I rest my head at night knowing that, I've done well by not only to myself, but those around me as well.
Yeah. And finding solutions means in our world of investing in particular, I could recommend a dozen fantastic books. Some better than others, yet there isn't one that is going to be the be-all end-all guide that is everything you need. So that knowledge, that path to knowledge or path to greatness really is through constant learning. We've
Yeah.
got to be perpetually in that learning mode and looking for opportunities. And okay, who's sitting at the table next to me that I need to make eye contact with because I just saw them on stage and I want to know them?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Julia Lissay. Okay. Yes, I will be more than happy to follow up with you, Julia.
Yeah.
I was on a plane back from Safety Harbor, Florida a couple of weeks ago and ended up sitting between this really interesting couple. He's an investor who happens to own 42 Wendy's franchises.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you're someone that I want to know your story, and I may have opportunities for you to invest in some of the syndications that I'm a part of. So how do I add value to you and your family?
Yeah.
Well,
Definitely. And it's like you're saying, like some of the people that you mentioned earlier, like some of the people that we admire, that we aspire to be like, are like a lot more approachable.
oh yeah,
It was at a networking mixer, and the funniest part of meeting Julia is like, well, not meeting her, but talking to her for the second time. It was like I was already a little tipsy. So it's like normally that's not how you would like to present yourself in front of someone. Hey, that's not usually the best. But it's like we had a great conversation, and then like we connected, we were able to meet, and I thank God because like she's a very even if I didn't have this podcast, this platform, I feel like she would have got on and had a conversation with me.
Yes, she would.
Connected very well.
Yes, she
Like
would.
for anyone that doesn't know really where to start, I was talking about this too the other day. Like, why not just start a podcast, say it's about entrepreneurship, and interview a whole bunch of people? It gives you a reason to reach out, right? Because time is so important nowadays. And so when you reach out and you want to talk to somebody, it's like, how can you provide them value? If you don't have, too much money to provide, and there's other ways. Like for me, like now I'm going to this podcast and I reach out to people. It's like, hey, I can get you, in front of more people and in front of a larger audience. I can help promote you. And that way I get what I want. I want to talk to these people. I want to hear their stories. I want to get to know them. They get to get their message out there and blast it out to everyone else. It's a win-win for everybody. Like we talked about Keller Williams thing.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Well, and that you and I, every time we talk, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, A, who can I introduce him to that should be on this? And B, who can I introduce him to that he can go beyond theirs? And that's the beauty. And there's, again, it's not a zero-sum game. We create these symbiotic relationships where everything grows.
Yeah. And
nothing doesn't have to die for something else to grow.
Exactly. And it's like, it kind of reminds me too of the story of the Phoenix, right? And like, if something does die, something does burn, it always is in order to make room for, something much, much better. And this guy, Jordan Peterson, I listened to, he was talking about like, if all of us are like a forest, right? Majority of us, like majority of what we say and think or do, it's like, a lot of it's dead wood. Right. And so it's like, if you start a forest fire, right, you risk losing the entire forest, but better to lose the entire forest and be left with one stable tree standing than to be an entire forest filled with dead wood. Right. Because then from that one tree that stands, if that's the only thing that stands, at least you know that you'll be a strong, sturdy, capable tree. And then from there, more trees similarly to grow. But it's like, you get so scared because it's like, you have to burn off, and it's usually painful. It's dangerous. If you've ever seen a forest fire, I've only seen videos, but those look terrifying, right? But it's like, it's that process you kind of have to undergo in order to, get to a point where it's like, all that, dead wood, all the, past, struggles and mindsets and limiting beliefs, all that has to leave before you get to where you need to be.
So I think to build off that analogy, I think the first deadwood that has to go has to be scarcity.
Yeah.
And then the next layer is you have to let go of pride.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to be able to say, okay, what I've been doing doesn't work. I need to do something different. How can I go learn how to do that?
Yeah.
And not rely on yourself. Being able to ask for help and saying, hey, I'm wrestling with this. What would you, if you were in my situation, what would you do?
Yeah.
And people are more than willing to reach out and do that with you. And it doesn't have to be a cup of coffee, and just a conversation. Just a conversation. You never know who you're going to meet walking down the street, or the guy next to you on the airplane, or in a networking mixer.
Yeah. It's great.
Coming from contribution to all that we do.
It's like the counselor I was talking to the other day too, she was talking about like how she had her kids in sports, and while like I think her daughter was in ballet or something like that, she was helping the instructor with like admin work, right? Because you weren't able to pay in full. It's like it's like getting scrappy a little bit, figuring out what else can I do to provide value. so that, I can contribute to what you have going on. And when people take the time to realize and get a little creative, for example, the social media classes that I started teaching, I didn't think I was that good at social media. I just knew a thing or two, right? If Lee didn't reach out in the comments and was like, John, can you teach a class on this? Right? I would have never even knew that that's something that people would think are valuable. We tend to like undermine what we have going on and undermine our skills and our credentials.
And Lee is great about seeing potential in others and seeing opportunities and saying,
exactly.
Okay, what's your skill set? How do we leverage that for you and for the greater good?
Yeah.
And it's, again, leverage almost sounds like a negative connotation of using people, but it's not. It's using your skills to supersede my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Because, what might feel like a burden to me, social media, that could fill you with joy to do that all day long. Right?
Yeah.
And so just because we don't enjoy it doesn't mean that there isn't someone else who does.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of brings up a point that I talked to someone about on an episode. And he was like, that money, all it is a token of appreciation.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I love
and
that.
So it's like, the more money you have, the more tokens of appreciation that you've gotten. Right. And here's another thing too, like when it comes to the idea of scarcity, it's, there's one guy who was also talking about like, there's more money on the planet than there is air. But you never hear anyone crying and talking about, oh, you took my air, you stole my air, right? But with money, like, but like, on all odds, when you think about it, you can print money. There will always be money, right?
Yeah.
But you can't print air. You can't create more air, right? And despite money being infinite, right? Because you can always print it if you run low. People still, are scarce about it and go about it thinking very scarce when it's like that's not serving you. And if people realize like, hey, like if I just like took some time to reflect, audit myself, what have I done? What can I potentially do to help? And just like, all right, now what do I want to do? Who do I need to reach out to get to that point? And what's my in? Right? Like for me, as I was mentioning earlier, my in is like, if I have someone I really want to talk to, hey, I have a podcast, right? That's my in. Like, I have this platform. I want to talk to you. Will you be interested in the conversation? And most of the time, like they'll say yes. It's not like, hey, I just want to pick your brain. I feel like that, as I said earlier, like everyone is fighting for your time, especially when you made it somewhere. So it's like, find your in. For the, the pivot shift group. It was like social media, right? I taught that first class, then opened the door to teach another class and then another class. And I got interviewed a couple of times, but it's like, I would have never realized that had I not taken the time. And luckily, as you said, Lee, seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. Similarly, it's like how your friend seen something in you, and so did your parent, and so did your wife, and so did Mona. They all seen a great real estate agent in you. And you've never seen that in yourself, because sometimes we can't see our true potential and what we're cut out to be.
And that's a great mindset to have, and it's something I've shared with some of the agents that I coach, and it's that idea of, and I've heard it through James Shaw as well. Until you believe in yourself, borrow my belief in you. Mm-hmm. Because I see it. I see your potential. So trust, if you trust me and you trust that I love you, know that I'm here for your good and not for your harm. Mm-hmm. Know that there's greatness in you and we're going to go find it together. Let's continue on the journey.
And I love that you said that too, because a lot of the time people say you have to fake it till you make it, right?
Yes.
And not realizing a lot of these things, they're scarce beliefs, right? Fake it till you make it. That's not, you have to believe it to achieve it. And it sounds so corny and cliche saying it, right? It sounds a little cringy, but like when you're in belief, our brain works, our subconscious works to provide all the evidence we need to make sure our identities are true, whether that is a true identity. So if you're faking it till you make it, you're identifying yourself as someone that's not who you want to be.
It's not authentic.
So your brain is going to give you all the information, all the, the facts necessary to support the idea that you're an imposter, you're fake, you're disingenuine, right? But if you believe it, if you believe that you're someone, right, it's not about the person it's not about making $1 million, Jim Rohn says, it's about the person you become in order to make $1 million. Like, what person do you have to become that you can just gift out $1 million a year and write a check and not have to worry about it? Like, what's that, John? What's that Christian version of Christian? How do they talk? Yeah. How do they operate? And like, when you see that, and then you believe that you can be that person and that you are that person, well, your brain is going to start providing evidence to support that idea that that's who you truly are. And kind of what you were saying, if you don't have that belief yet, find others around you. If it's not in your inner circle, find mastermind groups like we did with the Pivot Shift family, right?
Yep.
but they're out there. You just have to find them
Yeah.
or create
I mean,
them.
that biological piece that you're talking about, I mean, that goes to the reticular activating system, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you focus on expands, so that if you see beauty and greatness and opportunity, and that's how you wire your brain, because
Mm-hmm.
it's intentional. We get to, your first thought might happen, but you choose your second thought, right? You choose how
Yeah.
you react to it. So that what we're focusing on expands. When you see beauty and opportunity and abundance and greatness, you're going to see more and more of it. If you
Yeah.
see the world as against you and everyone's out to get you, and you have the worst luck, well, then you're going to have, your luck is going to continue to decline.
Yeah.
And you're going to see the people that for whatever reason, whatever they're going through, whatever stage of life they're in, they are not supportive of where you are and where you think you want to go.
Mm.
It comes back to intentionality. What are you choosing to surround yourself with? What are you choosing to focus on? What are you choosing to put into your head?
Mm-hmm.
Right? On average, I'm in the car about 100 miles a day, and that's just the reality of my life. Well, I could listen to talk radio that is all about angry people. I could listen to the news, which is all doom and gloom. I could listen to sports, which is again angry people. I listen to podcasts and Audible books because that's where I get my learning.
Yeah.
You know, that's when we first went into lockdown with COVID a couple of years ago. I had to book time on my calendar to just sit at home and listen to podcasts, because I missed that. It was just a natural part of my routine.
Yeah.
And it continues to be a natural part of my routine. It's an hour each way on the days that I go into the office. I'm like, sweet, I get a podcast and a half today. Let's go.
Yeah. And if you're on double speed, it's 4.
Right.
But yeah, I
depends on if I've had my coffee yet or not, whether I can handle that.
I'm telling you, your brain, most of the time that we yawn is not because we're tired, it's because our brain doesn't have enough to compute to keep us, engaged. Yeah, it's bored.
It's just bored.
Yeah.
Give me something exciting. And that's, if I'm sitting on the couch watching TV at night, which I do decompress, yet that decompress, I'm like, I shut asleep like 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
If I'm at an event and there's people and activity and conversation, I'll go all night.
Yeah.
As long as I've got something, as long as I'm engaged with someone, I'll keep going.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just yesterday too, I was borderline, like, ready to hibernate. I was exhausted. It was like 2 in the afternoon. I just ate. Food was getting to me. And I was on my phone for a little bit, sitting down, and I was exhausted, eyes closed. And then I had a podcast interview at 3, turned the lights on, got my camera prepped up, got into it. And, 5-10 minutes in, it's like, hey everyone, welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. I was just going. I had a podcast interview like an hour or 2 after that. And I'm just on that podcast, boom, high level, high energy, just ready to keep it going.
I no lie, I took a 15-minute power nap before I got on. I'd been at the office all morning, had some great meetings, was really productive. Got home and I'm just like, oh, I'm just out of energy. I just need to stop. And that's okay. And you need to read your body, and you need to work around your energy levels. And yes, there are things that we can do to control that energy and to build more of it through activity and fitness and whatnot. But there are times that you need to stop. You mentioned, was it Jordan Fried that you mentioned?
Jordan Peterson.
Okay. Well, another Jordan Fried, he coaches his clients along the idea of scheduling your life around a 1-3-7. And it's taking one day off a week away from business. It doesn't mean you have to stop and like be a hermit, but just don't do business. Take a 3-day weekend every month, so that you are forced to step away from work, not just have it spinning in your background.
Yeah.
And then take a 7-day vacation every quarter, because 7 days is long enough for you to have to transition your work to someone else. 3 days, you can kind of push your clients off.
Yeah.
7 days, you have to have a backup plan. There has to be systems and tools and models and people in place to keep your business operating when you're not available for that.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And Christian, you've been dropping amazing advice this entire podcast interview. I enjoyed this conversation. Where can we connect with you at? Where could we find you at, so that we could, find out more about what you're doing, or we're looking to buy, sell, invest real estate?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So LinkedIn, Christian Scott, I'm not an Instagram person. I keep it simple. ChristianScott@kw.com. That's ChristianScott@kw.com. And feel free to call or text 603-560-5318. That goes right to my cell. And like I said, those were the relationships that started me on some of these big investments because they gave me a number to call and I reached out. So if I've said something that touched you, motivated you, if you've got questions, I'm here to serve. That's what we get to do.
Yeah, amazing. And so now it's time for the final 4 questions. Christian, without further ado, question number 1 is, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
It's not about me. Yep. When you're growing up, it's very easy to be self-centered. And when you have that realization that life is so much bigger than the world that we see, yep, it's as simple as, it's not about me.
Yeah.
And that works, when people say something that might offend you, they're not out to hurt me. It's not about me in that case either. But the world isn't about me. So let's just relax with it.
Yeah. What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Integrity. You've got to be self-aware enough to know your core values and live into those core values and be willing to step aside from things that aren't in alignment with who you are. You have to be true to yourself, and integrity allows you to do that.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
Oh, the Bible. I'll go with the obvious because we're not talking about the Bible. That's the game changer. That's the playbook to life. That's what it's what I start my day with. It's where I find my motivation, my encouragement. It's what I use to pour into others. It's where I get my affirmations come straight from Bible, straight from Scripture.
Yeah.
That's how I keep it going.
This is not part of the question, but just out of curiosity, what's your favorite Bible verse?
Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works that He prepared in advance for me to do. And that's my mission, because it's big enough that I'll never accomplish it. But the challenge every day is, okay, what's the good work that you have planned for? What do I get to go out and do? How do I build a business big enough that whatever good work you put in front of me, I'm ready for it?
Yeah, amazing. Mine is Colossians 3:17. It's something along the lines of, in everything we do, whether in word or in deed, do it for the Lord Jesus Christ and give thanks to God the Father.
Amen. Yep.
Okay. And then question number 4 is, what is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
A legacy of generosity, generational wealth that promotes generosity. And that's why our kids are very aware of our giving and the sacrifices that we've made as a family along the way to be able to do that. Prime example of trying to pour that into my kids. We're part of a church plant in Londonderry, New Hampshire. It's called Beacon Church. My 17-year-old and I are there every Sunday at 7 a.m. to set up. We're done by 8:30, 8:30. First service is at 9. We serve at either the 9 o'clock or the 10:30 service. And then we pack it all up and get ready to do it the next week. And, there aren't a lot of high schoolers who get excited about, oh yeah, we get to go set up church today. Let's go. Let's go play with the kids in the nursery. What do you want to do after that? And so that's important. We need to seek out the opportunities to make life lessons real, not just something you read in a book.
Amazing. I say the same thing. Like when I have my own kids, it's time for me to bring up the next generation. Like I want to plan a vacation where it's like, we fly there first class, fly back economy, right? Just so they could see that like the life lesson in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like Endo with the, February vacation in Costa Rica, living large, and April vacation in Nicaragua, experiencing what poverty is.
Yeah. And so, Christian, I had a great conversation with you, not only on the podcast, but like before.
Yeah, we really should have recorded the pre-show.
That would have made for great content as well.
Oh, for sure.
I'm super glad that our lives were able to connect and cross, with, us being, we're not too far away, but most likely
at some point, I'm coming down there and taking you out to lunch. We're going to get together face to face, my friend.
Definitely. And so I'm glad we were able to somehow cross paths, and I'm glad that, I was able to enter into your life and you were able to enter into mine. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch, looking forward to hearing all the good stuff that you have going on. And just thanks again for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Blessings to you, my friend.
Alrighty, and that's the episode.
Nice.
Yeah, Christian, this is easily like
so much fun.
One of my favorite podcasts. Like, and not